Hi, my name is Lesley. I am the exhibition manager at Fact Liverpool, and this is going to be an artist talk with Kasia Molga and Ivan Henriques, and it is on the event of a new commission that they have developed together called Natural Glitch, which is a co-production between Ars Electronica Festival and Fact Liverpool. So the reason we're doing this is for Ars Electronica, because their festival is online, and they have devised the festival as a series of gardens that take place all across the world. We've invited Kasia and Ivan to talk to us a little bit about the new work they created, especially for the festival and especially for Fact. It was inspired from our conversations with Kasia around the living planet, which is Fact's 2020 year-long exploration of the non-human, of ecologies and of systems that we create and that we dismantle, and the systems of power that we put in place. So yeah, that's just a little bit of context about where this conversation is coming from. Kasia Molga, I'm joined with, is an artist, a technologist, a coder, and she works on the intersection of art, design, technology, and science. She explores emerging trends in technologies and how they influence human perception, particularly the relation to natural environments and ecologies. So thank you for joining us, Kasia.
Thank you.
And she's been a long-time collaborator, and very specifically on this project for quite some time, I think, with Ivan Henriques, who also joins us. Ivan is a transdisciplinary artist and researcher who works in multimedia installations that examine living systems. He explores his work in hybrids of nature and technological culture, creating new forms of communication between humans and other living organisms. So you can see why they would be quite a symbiotic pair to work together. So after some conversations with Kasia around how she might like to engage with us in the Living Planet program, she invited Ivan. And so they came up with a very beautiful idea for an artwork that would exist online and would capture the experience of being in lockdown, the frustrations of it, the daily minutiae of it, the intimacies of it, but also would think about how we could overcome lockdowns, how we could overcome borders, how we could overcome this idea of spaces that bring us apart. By thinking about our bodies in a very different way, and about thinking about how we travel in a very different way and how we engage with technologies. So that leads us to Natural Glitch. So I don't know, Kasia, do you want to just say a little bit about the artwork, what it's about for people who haven't seen it and why they should go and look at it?
The origin of it, really, it's this kind of idea inspired by the situation which we found ourselves in March, that is COVID and lockdown, and the way how that forced us to start looking at technology and nature around in a slightly new, maybe not new, but in a different way, which became quite vivid. So our kind of interconnections with natural environment through the agency of the virus, which suddenly, took over our lives and forced us, inside our houses, in a way also forced us to use technology in different way. And, for me, that was a sort of glitch in so-called normality. And basically, just like, in my past, I can probably say for Ivan as well, like each single artwork, each single project which we do is a sort of story. It's just, it's encapsulated in a various forms. And so this project became actually a real written story for the beginning, which also I think is very important for this particular time, because there was nothing really to do. You could kind of sit and observe, talk and write. And it was a very new, for me, in a way, form of expression or form of engagement in my own creativity. Because Ivan and I, we talked a lot about certain subjects which are inside that narrative. You know, he became my natural partner to collaborate on it, and it just became as this beautiful, but hopefully beautiful, magical dialogue, and dialogue which I suppose is a bit of the fiction, but it is very much rooted in whatever is happening and was happening, you know, during this time.
We talked a lot about this idea about truth and fiction and where the lines blur, and that's something you feel very strongly about bringing into the work, like that it would reflect this moment that is like neither one or the other.
Yeah, like just getting a bit the thread that Kasia just meant, you know, like I had like several exhibitions like canceled or postponed, and Kasia was kind of in the same situation, and actually it became a more like a sort of a funny way to tackle like the situation, because actually when the corona pandemic started, it really it looked like something very unnatural from our daily life was, you know, because it's always like a pressure and speed of doing things and everything, like there's an agenda for everything, and then suddenly it kind of collapses all this kind of a pre-organization that we had, which leads to this glitch from the natural lifestyle that we used to have. And apart from that, also like we consider like a sort of a glitch, not only like in the digital level, but also in what is happening in the environment, which we can consider that the environment it's glitched. You know, we know that the environment is being damaged all the time. You know, so how could we tackle this situation, which is happening as sort of a real mode, but sounded very much like fictional? You know, sounded like a sort of a fiction, like what we're gonna do tomorrow, what will be of tomorrow. Sounded like a sort of a sci-fi movie. And of course, in my works, I also bring a bit of like bioscientific fiction also. So it kind of merged also together with the reality and the fact that the things were happening together with the things that we had in our imagination.
Yeah, there's a really beautiful moment where like you're reading the text and it's feels very familiar, feels very like just very mundane, and then all of a sudden there's these little departures into like the realm of sci-fi, the realm of like speculative design, speculative tech, and how easy that becomes. Like these intimate moments give way to like technological discovery, and like that was one of the reasons why like Kasia and Ivan invited me to frame the work curatorially, and rather than write a text about what it was and why it was and the socio-political issues that it kind of brought out, we chose to do something a bit more speculative because it felt necessary, that the framing is in a near future, but a very, very near future, but at the same time, not in any way near when we think about the technology that we use and that we're familiar with. But it feels so close to like Kasia and Ivan's practice that it's the next logical step to be able to dissolve your body into a series of molecules that you send over the internet, that you scan, that you like. It just seems to be the next technological advancement that we can, you know, do a Star Trek and just beam to wherever we want in an order of, you know, the correct order that allows us to exist in a new space. And I think that the idea of breaking down bodies is really powerful within the work. And I think it's one of the things that amongst the references to the erosions of landscapes and environmental damage that Ivan brings up quite a lot, that actually makes it quite a politicized work. I think that idea of dismantling bodies and the importance of the image of bodies and how those images of bodies are used, and also how we see like boundaries and territories, that starts to become like dissolved in the world that you're talking about. And so things that once separated us ideologically, physically, biologically, however, they become more muddled and abstract and less important when it comes to how we experience one another in the world.
No, I think it's, thank you so much for actually saying all of that and framing it. And I think you touched on a really important point, which I both of us were trying to convey through our practice, which is this kind of separation, negotiation between separation with a non-separation, of us, our human body, from environment, and how technology very often offers not so much of the insight into the environment, but very often this kind of fourth wall, like this fourth screen, this kind of, artificial division through which we observe environment. And also that situation with the lockdown, for example, I was thinking about it, that it was very inspiring because suddenly we had this kind of opportunity to listen and tune in to things around us, in the much more different way, because, suddenly there was silence, things were much more quiet. People find themselves having a bit more time as well. Everybody knows that birds, for example, were much more louder during this time, or much more hearable, basically. Scientists, they started recording all these amazing sounds from under the water because suddenly the marine traffic has stopped. I think that also the earthquakes or the seismic movements were much more visible for the technology which records them or sends them, because the movement of the vehicles was much but it was just basically absent. But at the same time, because of our environmental dependency, which virus as itself was a huge, it still is, it's a huge sign or a symbol, or just, we depend on it so much that we have to hide ourselves from it in a way. So we have to kind of enclose ourselves in our surroundings. And then we started using technology to connect with each other. So in a way, by being forced to maybe stop, and by being forced to stop and maybe observe and reflect, we also started using screens and technology and that, fourth screen, fourth wall, even more during the last few months. And I think that also kind of inspired, us to think about how can we get over that? How can we, in this situation, how can we think about human body not as a one individual, but as a collection of things? Like Ivan and I, we had this conversation some time ago about the fact that, for example, we are the collection of bacteria. So it's not me, it's us, really. And also, how can we use that as a metaphor for a pixel, for example, and how can we, mix and match and in a way, through the imagination, use that as a form of transport and form of connection, and find these new connections, not only between people, but also between other species and environment itself.
Yeah, no, like I also agree, like during this lockdown period, we had to be like, we're completely isolated. So, and we also saw like like new initiatives and new possibilities of a new way of economy, new ways of politics, but actually it seems now that everything is coming back to what it is. No, so actually, what we learned from this situation, even like a better quality of life, better quality, as Kasia was mentioning, better quality of air. We could be more in contact with nature. Is this what we are looking for? So, what kind of way, the direction that our humanity is taking? You know, because like we have to learn new ways of a symbiotic relationship with the environment, because the way we have this way that we have been dealing with the environment is just leading to what is happening now. You know, so how can we find new ways? So I think like this work that we also made for this event, it shows a bit like this background of accidents that we have been doing like through the world, and a bit of imagination of what could it be, you know, and questioning also like how, in which direction our humanity will be, and what we actually want.
I just think it's really interesting to look at the world in that glitch way. And like we talk a lot about, you know, simulation, and like it's a simulation, everything's a simulation, it's a glitch in the matrix, you know, like that is something that I think in our area everyone talks about a lot, about how everything's breaking down, and like you can see the underbelly of the matrix, because it's such a flawed system that doesn't benefit the people who are supporting it. And so it's kind of it's almost like a empathy exercise to be like, okay, this is something that's going very wrong and it's going to fail, and then what do we do when it fails? But it's also like an opting out exercise, right? It's like, okay, so it's not real, so there has to be something behind it. So I think like the idea that you call the whole work natural glitch, and that it does reflect these like inequities and impossibilities and all of these different things that you're experiencing in the world, is really interesting. And this idea that, as Kasia was saying, the possibility of technology is a different, almost like utopic platform, utopic exchange, and that's something that specifically within new media art we problematize quite a lot. And I wondered whether you wanted to talk a little bit about that.
In general, in my work, I have this issue with technology and the fact that it is made by humans, and it's very human-centered, and it kind of further disconnects us from non-human makers and natural environment, you know, and it's about, you know, trying to look as well as specific processes which are happening within nature, and you know, and trying to think about them as sort of living technology, and accept that there are things which are good as they are, and we don't have to have the new extra device to do something else, you know, which, for example, specific bacteria or specific worm can do really, really well. And it's just, and I think, I hope that actually that is also becoming quite present in the natural glitch, in this, you know, first chapter. I need to stress that it's a first chapter, first part of the whole work. But, you know, this kind of, in a way, like in a true philosophy to solar punk, that we very vividly came to this crossroads right now, where we know that there is so much possibilities available from technology which has been developed so far, that maybe we should just, you know, stop, use it, and reuse it, and see where it takes us, and go back from this high-tech, very clinical, very, very enclosed spaces to, you know, much more rural and raw, yeah, and wet and alive and moving, and see how we can, you know, instead of producing and inventing new things, how can we collaborate and see what can happen, not only for us humans, but also for the non-humans. And I suppose natural glitch as well is this kind of trying to find this connection, like almost palpable, tactile connection between me and molecules in environment, other cells, particles, and anything really which kind of constitute a life on this planet, and try to kind of embody this interconnection and follow that.
I mean, I amalgamate like the connection between a technological artifact, which is a machine with a living organism, but trying to find like new ways of communication and new ways of having living technologies. Because like, what if instead of we use dead material in order to create our things, we could collaborate and have like living systems cooperating with us, with the environment. I think like we have technology for that, and we also have knowledge for that. So I think if more and more people start to think in this way, maybe the glitch is a bit less.
I really liked what you said about it being like quite punk. Yeah, sure. It's that like anti-capitalist thing of like, actually don't need to keep creating more and more and more, because we haven't exposed the most optimistic uses of the technology that we have already. And I think like a lot of people at the minute are working on things that do connect them back to rural, do connect them back to like the ritual, connect them back to some sense of land, some sense of ownership, but within that being more of a caretaking rather than this is mine, you can't have it. But actually, like, with ownership comes responsibility and giving over a piece of yourself. And I think that like in the most sort of utopic science fiction, there is always that idea that you have to like give a little bit of your humanity, a little bit of your empathy to the technologies that you're working with. And I think that's what I enjoy so much about the script for the work that you guys have done, that you have these moments of poetry and these moments of like just intimate beauty with one another, where you're just discussing like mundanity, everyday things, but it embeds the whole very slick, very like science tech based conversation in something very real, very human, and very wet, which I really like when you say that. It's like, and I kind of scream at the same time because of how we're made. But I do really like that idea that opening up our bodies in one way allows technology in, but that we have to open up technology to allow our bodies in as well at the same time.
I can just agree with what you because that's one of the things that I think like technology can develop more like in a dry way, but if we find like this wet way of developing technology, which means having living material or have organic material combined with the technology that we already have, which is not an easy job, but it's like a real shift that we're gonna do towards the if you could say something like a world culture of using technology, because our approach to nature and to technology, this has to be more in balance, because the technology will never stop, and in order to have technology we need to destroy nature. But can we reinvent this equation? So this is also one of the things that in this natural glitch story also comes like, it underlines this kind of discussions that me and Kasia have been, not only in the natural glitch, but we've been discussing already.
I've been thinking about this idea of green, and I am obsessed with green in general. I love the color, and I am obsessed with creating images, using Photoshop, for example, which are full of juicy green shapes, and it kind of always conveys to me what I love about nature, and it's like, you know, this kind of wetness, you can almost smell it. And there is a fragment which talks about it in this in the story. But I've been thinking about the fact that, for example, when we look at the history of digitizing images, for example, and or creating 3D environments, and this kind of obsession of mimicking the nature, you know, creating more high and high res images of forests, for example, while at the same time, you know, the technology which creates those digital representation of natural environment also exploits the real environment, and that way, you know, this real environment becomes diminished or becomes no more, you know. And then there is, like, you know, this idea of fearing of missing out on things, you know, because we also recreate animals and you know, flowers and plants and bacteria in the digital way. We create these beautiful images. I mean, you know, few artists I know myself, and we look at those things through the screen, but we don't really look at that in real life, because, you know, either they got extincted, or it's just impossible, you know, for us to have a look. Or when we eventually go and look at them, you know, we don't have this kind of idea of looking at them for the first time, because we've seen them on the screen, and this kind of experience is also, it's a glitchy experience.
Yeah.
It's not how it should be. You know, we should be in awe of nature all the time, in my opinion.
Thank you so much, guys, for talking to me today. And to everyone, like, please go visit the website. So you can access Kasia and Ivan's website through fact.co.uk, and also from Ars Electronica's website, which is ars.electronica.art. Yeah, and so thank you both. Thank you to Ars Electronica. And I would also highly recommend that you go visit the FACT website to have a little look at the Living Planet program, which is our year-long program that looks into all these type of questions that we've been talking about nature, technology, art, politics, and how they all intersect. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lesley. Bye-bye.
Bye.